guys, what is up and welcome to this week's video. Now I am afraid to say that this album review that I'm going to do is probably going to be the most biased review on my whole channel. There is a very valid reason to that, which is that this is my favourite Queen album of all time. And it also features two of my favourite Queen songs ever on it too.
Mental.
And I think definitely if you were to ask me or certain other Queen fans, they would definitely say that this is the most underrated Queen album in their whole discography.
Trust me on that.
Of course, I am talking about the sometimes forgotten and unheard of Queen 2, which has become something of a cult favourite among many Queen fans. Now for those who do not know, the critics at the time, surprise surprise, absolutely hated this album. They slammed this album by saying it was too over the top, and that also that the tracks didn't seem to roll into one another and that they were just messed up and mixed in the wrong way.
I beg your pardon.
Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I think at first when you do hear this album and you're not quite used to Queen's whole discography, I think definitely it can be a bit of an odd and heavy sounding album, and I think the more that you listen to it, the more that you adore it. This album is not going to have the same energy as the first album, you know, no second album ever is. That's their trademark sound. That's them saying, okay, this is our sound in the music industry and that's how we're going to do it. So of course that's going to sound a lot more energized, a lot more fresh, but you find that with a lot of first albums no matter who the artist is. But in some ways, I think that Queen with Queen 2 really did the right things with this second album. It's the kind of second album that you want to hear from a band like Queen, because in some ways the second album just showed you that Freddie, Brian, Roger and John, they all matured as musicians and as songwriters too. This is the album whereby you first get a glimpse of those multi-layered overdubs and those rich harmonies, which we then grew to love to be the Queen sound as a whole. I think from that moment onwards, you hear that quite a lot, obviously, in all of their albums, and that's the Queen style that we all know. And I think at the time, in terms of the vinyl, when it first came out, I actually really adore the two sides to this album, and I would say that it was a big feature for when it was released. I think it was really ingenious of Queen to have these two sides to the different vinyls. How obviously side one is side white, which is a lot more lighter and flowing music wise, and definitely less heavy sounding than side 2, which is side black. But if you think about it, that's the clever thing about Queen, because I think these two sides of these albums definitely represent the different comparisons in writing and music of Freddie Mercury and Brian May.
No one's gonna stop me.
Who mainly wrote the respective sides of Queen 2 as well. It just shows you their different styles. Given the way it was written, given the way it was mixed, given the way that all of these tracks generally transition to each other, it really is a clever move by Queen. If you want an album that is generally all different sorts of styles but can be quite melodic, is that the right word? I hope it is. In some ways it does flow a little bit like a classic album. If you were listening to a classical music album or a vinyl, they would often transition into each other, and I think this is exactly what this album does, definitely, for sure. And like I said in this intro, guys, my two favourite songs are in this album, which are White Queen and March of the Black Queen, and they're just brilliant. They're different, like I said, it's that different comparison styles of both of the songs. Once again, I'm not being biased, but I think any album that has a little tease of Seven Seas of Rye at the end of it, it's pretty much a gem in my eyes. Mr. Roger Taylor also had involvement in one track in this album.
Wow.
I think with Loser in the End and the way that Roger wrote it, so that it generally was more heavier sounding in this album, I think that sort of then mirrored his involvement within the band. And I think it's fun to see in some ways, because then it foreshadowed what would come with later Queen albums. I think Roger got a lot more confidence to sing and to perform as well, and how they could interpret that into their live shows as well. And I think this was the song and the album that was then going to foreshadow what was going to happen with A Night at the Opera.
What exactly are you doing with that car?
However, remember guys, even though I am incredibly biased about this album and I think it's one of the best and it's one of my favourites, I do have to look at both sides of the argument. Now, when I was looking online, I couldn't actually see a lot of negative comments about Queen 2. As far as I can see, a lot of Queen fans generally do absolutely adore this album and don't really have much negativity about it. So really what I did was I looked at a lot of the critics' reviews at the time, and like I said, a lot of the critics said it was way over the top.
Oh, I can't believe I just said that.
That it just didn't really fit, that the songs going in together just felt a bit messy from time to time. Personally, if you were to ask me, I think if you're not used to Queen's music and Queen's style, then of course this would seem a bit over the top. It would be a bit like, what is happening here? But also, surprise, surprise, the critics couldn't read minds, time travel, see into the future, and those harmonies, like I said before, the overlays, all of that then became Queen history. Those are the Queen songs that were then later developed. Queen songs got better in terms of that, the production of music got better. So really, was it just because the critics didn't quite understand exactly what Queen was and what they could accomplish? Because stuff like Bohemian Rhapsody, that hadn't been written yet. They showed a little bit of 70s Ride. That is another thing that you need to consider when you read these critics' comments. So why exactly is this album so underrated? Now, I think this is mainly to do with the cover. The four heads, obviously, when you see this picture, what do you think of? You think of Bohemian Rhapsody. So I think because of that exact reason, I think that's why this album is often mistaken for other things. You know, it sort of hides the album in some ways, because if you see this picture, you think of Bohemian Rhapsody, which is not on this album. Bohemian Rhapsody wasn't actually released till a few albums later. So is it because of the album cover why often people do not know this album? I do not know. But I seriously urge everyone who hasn't already, if you haven't heard Queen 2 and you like Queen's different style of music, then definitely give this album a go, especially if you do love that classic Queen sound. But anyway guys, let me know down in the comments down below what you think of this album. Is it one of your favourites or do you absolutely despise it? Like always, all of you guys are entitled to your own opinion, so leave it down in the comments below and I can't wait to read them. Also, if you have not done so already, then please go and have a look at my previous Queen reviews on my channel. And if you did enjoy this video, then do not forget to give it a big thumbs up, and if you haven't already, then please do subscribe, and I shall see you guys in a video very soon. Bye!